Hey squad, Sykes here, and welcome back to another Halo Infinite news video here on InstallationX. Today, we're going to be looking at some of the new details from the most recent Inside Infinite blog post from 343 Industries for October 2021, and we're specifically getting into details around the Halo Infinite character models for the enemy types that we are going to be seeing in the campaign. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you leave a like, head over to InstallationX and subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications for more Halo Infinite content. So basically, the whole blog post was split into two kind of parts, really. We went into the detail of character models around the enemy factions, and there was a little bit on the HUD and the UI in the game. I'm not going to be touching on that in this video, but I will leave a link in the description for the whole blog post for you guys to check out. But I specifically want to look at all of the new character models that we got from this blog post, because we've had some absolutely brilliant renders and a few more details going into what we could expect from the elites, the brutes, the grunts, the jackals, and the new skimmers, as well as a few other surprises in there as well. So first up, we're going to talk about the elites. So the elites are basically the whole of the alien species that we're going to see in Halo Infinite are based around the Halo 3, Halo Reach time frame in terms of the art direction and the aesthetic. So the elites have had quite a bit of a makeover from where they were with Halo 4 and Halo 5. In Halo 4 and Halo 5, they were really quite clunky and hulky, and they were trying to fill this void of being this big, heavy threat that was missing because the brutes weren't in the games. And the Prometheans weren't really fitting that role either, so the elites kind of evolved into something that I personally didn't really like that much, but 343 are very much going back to the original elite design that we've already seen before, but specifically they've talked about in terms of animation. They want them to feel fast, agile, intelligent. The look of them looks very sleek, very refined, and the purpose of the elites, as well as being the threat that we recognize from the previous games, they're going to be a big contrast to the big hulking brutes, because the brutes are back and they're very much going to play that role. So it looks like the elites are going to fill the classic role of where they were in terms of being the really agile, maneuverable threat that are hard to pin down, and you have to be more tactical with how you approach them in terms of getting rid of their shields and whatnot, like we're used to. But the renders of the elite look so clean. And this is what elites should look like, and I get a real callback to the Halo 3 elites in particular. Halo 3 was my first Halo game, and I love that game to death. So to go back to that kind of route is fantastic. So the elites, there's not really much change in them other than the art style. We can expect the same things, but very much looking forward to playing them. Obviously, the biggest changes have come with the brutes. So the brutes are very much going to be front and center of the game in terms of they are the bulk of the Banished under Aatrox and Escherum's control, and we're expecting them to be quite heavily influential within the campaign. So the brutes, as we know before, are intended to be very aggressive, not just to be dumb space monkeys, quoted by 343. But they want the brutes to feel more visceral as well. So it looks like the brutes are going to have much more dynamism to where they were in previous games in terms of how parts of their armor can be shot off, the animations in the way they attack, voiceovers that they use in certain situations. So it looks like the elites and the brutes are going to have their classic contrast between the two. And essentially, the brutes are intended to be a brute force. Again, quoted by 343. So it appears that the elites are going to have more of the peel off from combat and take cover role, whereas the brutes are going to be more in your face, raging, berserking, being just really throwing their weight around. One of the things that they've focused heavily on in the blog post is about that visual damage that we've seen in the campaign trailers, about how different parts of the brute's armor can be shot off depending on what you aim for, so shoulder pads, thigh pads, helmets and whatnot. And it appears that that's going to be quite a very obvious thing that's going to be going on in your combat battles in terms of armor pieces flying around the battle area. And that's why they've specifically designed the brute tech suit so that it can be modularized to have different armor platings and different sets depending on the strength of the individual brutes, which we're going to touch on in a second. So the brutes just look brilliant, and where we were just over 12 months ago now, when the Craig meme hit the internet and kind of blew up, and everyone kind of had a bit of a joke and a laugh, but there was a serious kind of undertone around that saying, look, this game is not up to where people were expecting it to be. But seeing some of these renders now, there have been some hell of a glow ups going on, because the brutes look absolutely fantastic. I never really wanted the brutes to go back to their Halo 2 art style. I wasn't really a massive fan of that. This is the right sweet spot for me in terms of finding that blend between Halo 3 and Halo Reach. Halo Reach was quite weird because I felt that the brutes were well toned down to where they were in Halo 3. This is the right mix for me, so I'm very, very happy with that. The other things to consider with the brutes as well that 343 have openly mentioned is that they are intended to be extraordinarily strong. They carry lots of weight around, and they have this pent-up anger that is going to come across really, really clearly when you fight them. So it looks like, especially the brute berserkers are back, and I'm hoping they are going to be a real challenge, because they were really challenging in Halo 2. So I'm glad that that's back. We got a little bit about the pilot. There's not really much in terms of gameplay around the pilot, and that's what they've kind of opened up. So it looks like the pilot isn't going to have much of a gameplay role. It's going to be more of a narrative role in cutscenes and whatnot. But they have said that even though he is not actively part of the gameplay in a way that the elites and the brutes and the other characters are, he's had the same diligence and rigor in terms of making him a narrative character feel real as possible. Making sure he's rendered incredibly well. He looks fantastic, which is awesome. So that was all we really got on the pilot. Now, this was the really interesting bit that I was actually enjoyed reading about quite a lot. And these are the Spartan killers. So 343 have defined their kind of boss or mini-boss type characters as these Spartan killers. So apparently it was an early concept that actually evolved over time, and the whole concept is around having an elite force of Banished that could go toe-to-toe with a Spartan and actually win. Now, we've seen hints of these even prior to the overview trailer, because we had Jega Radomni was announced a while back, and we actually saw him in the trailer, and we've now got a full render of him. We also have, I think it's Hyperius, who is the other announced, which I approve, Spartan killer that we know now. He's the guy who a lot of people are clocked early on in the toy marketing, who has apparently, what we believe, is Locke's Hunter helmet as part of his shoulder gear, and the Arbiter's golden armor from Halo 5 as part of his thigh gear. So he's going to be an interesting character that's going to pop up. And it looks like all these Spartan killers are essentially Spartan headhunters, which is really, really exciting, because when I saw Jega, I was like, I really, really badly want this guy to be a active part throughout the whole campaign, where he's hunting you or others, and they're not just a one-off, you kind of burn and the battle's done and that's that. I want them to be a reoccurring theme, and I want there to be a story that drags out throughout the campaign, even if it's not the main story. So apparently the 343 wanted to find a way to set the group apart from the rest of the enemies, but at the same time make them cohesive with the Banished itself. So they've gone with the tradition, what we now term, I guess, the traditional Banished style, which is the black armor with splashes of red. That's why we see Jega with his red blades. That's why we've seen, which is more likely going to see red glowing grav hammers potentially, like Atriox had in Halo Wars 2. And apparently each Spartan killer is unique and has their own story and battle trophies, whatever the hell that means. So that's all they've said about the Spartan killers for now, but it looks like they're going to have a very defined role in the campaign. We've already seen one in the overview trailer, which was Tremonius, and it appears that they're going to follow suit, similar to what they've done with the AI and PvE threats and trophies that were in Warzone from Halo 5, where they're going to have the health bars, the shields, and all that kind of stuff. I'm hoping that they'll balance this up, because the one thing that I will say about those encounters in Halo 5 is they were very much a routine kind of run-of-the-mill encounter. It was just with a same enemy type that was more buffed. A traditional boss fight has various different stages and things that you have to figure out and learn. So I'm hoping that they go into that little bit of deeper level with some of these characters, and actually they have other abilities to make them more difficult to encounter and kill. That would be really, really neat. The other thing that they touched on quite a lot was the Skimmers. So the Skimmer, they haven't really gone into lots of detail, but they've given us more of an understanding of how these guys are going to play. So they are a mid-tier combatant, sort of on the level of Jackals and higher-tier Grunts. So they're not like lower-tier Grunts, but then they're around that range. They aren't fully flying, which is interesting. I thought they were in the overview trailer, but they have hover packs to allow them to move around quickly and provide unique challenges and opportunities to the player while on foot or in a vehicle. Apparently 343 didn't want to pursue a full flying enemy, as they found in FPS flying enemies can get a little frustrating and disorienting as the player is forced to look up. Skimmers, like their namesake, move around by just skimming above the ground. So they are very much a ground combatant, and apparently the character animation team was tasked with making them believably hover above the ground. So they're very much a ground troop. There are several things though that they can they've done to mix up the verticality a little bit. They're changing their height, their jetpack orientation based on how fast they're moving, rotating their bodies, slowing down to simulate braking. An interesting point here is that a lot of work went into the unique way they interact with vehicles, and I'm really excited about how that turned out. Keep your tanks clear. Very interesting. Now, one of the things that I thought in the overview trailer was actually that these guys were more of a Covenant threat or a Banished threat. But kind of looking back at it, I'm not sure, because I think actually they might be more similar to the Harbinger and what we got to see of them. So actually these guys might not be a standard Covenant/Banished threat. They may be something completely different. So very, very, very intrigued about where that's going to go. A couple of other things that we got to see. We got to have a good look at the Marines. The Marines look really, really cool. I think this is just, again, a really good blend of what we've seen in previous games. I really like the aesthetic of the Marines. I like the idea of them being more heavily involved in the campaigns again, like they were in CE and 2 and 3. And we also got to look at the Grunt Mule, which is the weapon grunt. So basically these guys have a weapon rack on their back, and they carry higher powered weapons for brutes or elites to pick up during battles, which is really neat. So I guess they would be your higher tier grunts. And we also got to look at the Jackal models as well. So the Jackal models, if I'm being honest, these are probably the most cartoonish of the models out of, in my opinion. But one of the really neat things is how they're going to interact differently with the sandbox. So one of the things that 343 mentioned is that with the grapple shot, you can actually grapple shot a Jackal with a shield, and it will pop out their shield so that you've then got them vulnerable to then shoot, which is really neat. So yeah, overall, really, really massive improvements on what we saw last year. I feel like all of these, yes, they are renders and we're not seeing them running in game yet, and we've seen a very good look at them in the overview video and they look great, but this is a massive upgrade because there seems to be more detail. Just they've clearly had more time to polish everything up. Everything looks more detailed. It looks way more real. It doesn't look anywhere near as cartoony or plastic as it did last year. And I think they've just struck an incredible balance with this art style for this game. You know, taking things from the legacy of the franchise, but also making it feel modern, new, and fresh without feeling like they're just rehashing the past. I know some people might want that. I personally don't. But yeah, everything that we've seen from the campaign of this game in the last week has got me very, very excited, and I cannot wait to get hold of the game on December 8th. Going to play the absolute hell out of the campaign. Cannot wait for it. Very, very excited. Well, squad, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please make sure you leave a like, head over to InstallationX and subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications for more Halo Infinite videos. Let me know your thoughts on all the character models that you've seen in this video and your overall thoughts on the campaign so far in the comment section. Don't forget to follow myself and the channel on social media with links in the description. And as always, I'm Sykes, and for more on Halo Infinite and all things Xbox, stay tuned to InstallationX. Bye, guys.